What's going on, young people? Thanks for joining me for the fourth homework of Unit 8. Unit 8 is clinical psychology, so we're studying the disorders and the treatments for those disorders. Today we're going to be focusing on one category, personality disorders, okay? Personality disorders. So we're going to kind of do an introduction of what these disorders look like, and then talk about the three different clusters before having y'all do a little check for understanding. And again, we're just covering one chapter in the DSM-5, chapter 18. The chapter is just called personality disorders. So I know this is going to be a hard graphic to see. I'll have it pulled up in class for y'all. But the purple, blue, and orange categories represent the three different clusters and the 10 different types of personality disorders that one can be diagnosed with. So what is a personality disorder? There are four things that personality disorders do that kind of mess with people, okay? That make a person deviant, dysfunctional, and distressed. Okay, the first thing, distorted thinking. So personality disorders mess with your cognition, the way that you think about the world. Second, personality disorders mess with your emotions, right? So they mess with your affect, kind of like the mood disorders do. Third thing, they impact your self-control and your ability to regulate your behaviors and what you do. And finally, they impact your relationships with others, your social interactions, okay? So if you're looking at this and like, wow, Mr. John, that's a lot of things. Yeah, being diagnosed with a personality disorder is a big deal. It has a big impact on all sorts of different aspects of your life, okay? So there are three different clusters. You don't need to write their names down here because we're literally going to have a Roman numeral, a slide about each of these. But the way they're grouped, cluster A is considered the eccentric, people who act odd or unusually. Cluster B is going to be people who are dramatic, that they cause drama. And then cluster C are going to be the personality disorders that are marked by anxiety and fear. So let's first off talk about cluster A, the odd and eccentric personality disorders, okay? This first one is called paranoid personality disorder. People who believe in conspiracy theories that just don't make sense. They believe that people might be after them, okay? If it impacts their thinking, their emotions, the way they treat others, and their behaviors, it can be diagnosed with a personality disorder. Number two, schizoid personality disorder. Schizoid is people who prefer to be away from others, okay? This root, schiz, means split. So schizoid people, they prefer to be split from others, meaning they don't want to be with other people. In fact, they prefer being by themselves, and they may not be able to fully understand and connect with others. Schizotypal personality disorder, I know it's frustrating that both of these have the same root as schizophrenia, right? Schizotypal is when they are a completely different type of person. They might have beliefs and things that don't make sense, right? People who get diagnosed, they might see things that are not there. They might feel like they can read other people's minds. This kind of looks like schizophrenia, whereas schizoid, it's people who prefer to be by themselves, okay? You'll notice that this whole cluster, it kind of seems like schizophrenia, right? Delusions, strange ways of thinking. Hallucinations, strange things that they perceive, okay? So a lot of folks who get diagnosed with schizophrenia, they might actually have a personality disorder. And some folks who get diagnosed with a personality disorder, they might actually have schizophrenia. So it's really tough to tell. We might look at a person's dopamine to try and make a determination on what exactly is the root of their cause. Second cluster, cluster B. This is the cluster, put a star by this one. The most important, the most well-known, and this is the cluster they like to ask the most questions about on the AP exam, okay? So first off in this cluster, antisocial personality disorder, okay? The word antisocial gets used poorly in society today. A lot of times when we see a kid who is like quiet or wants to be by themselves, we say, hey, they're being antisocial. No, those kids are being asocial. They're just not choosing to be social. Antisocial means against society. These individuals are who, in previous versions of the DSM, might have been called sociopaths or psychopaths, okay? People who have no regard for others' individual rights, freedom, privacy, health, security. They do not show remorse when they violate other people's privacy, property rights. They have difficulty showing empathy in the sense that they have trouble feeling other people's pain. They might be good at reading emotions, but they use that ability to read emotions in order to manipulate others, okay? So the MMPI, right? Y'all watch that TED Talk about the guy who pretended to be crazy so that he would get locked in a mental hospital instead of the prison, right? They talked about him being, the whole TED Talk was about antisocial personality disorder. So I hope you watched it. A second personality disorder in this cluster is about histrionic personality disorder. Histrionic. When I see this word histrionic, it reminds me of the word history. People who have histrionic, they believe that they should be at the center of history, okay? They think that their lives are the most important and that everyone should be paying attention to them. They will often do things that are outrageous and unusual just to get people's attention. They have to have people looking at them, people talking about them, people paying attention to them, or else they almost like they feel like they cannot survive. So they will do crazy things, sometimes including things that are harmful to themselves or to others. And the key here is that they want people's attention, right? Now, we often get histrionic mixed up with narcissistic personality disorder. In our last unit, when we talked about personality, we talked about the narcissism personality inventory. It was measuring this personality disorder. These people feel like they are better than other people. They deserve special treatment. They often come off as arrogant. They are not humble. They don't really care about other people because they just think they are better. The difference between person 2 and 3. Histrionic people, they really need other people's attention and approval. These folks, narcissistic folks, they don't care about other people's approval because they don't care about other people. They know they're better than everyone else. They don't really care what people think of them. As a histrionic person, they need that validation and attention, okay? When you think about like the Kardashians or other celebrities, sometimes they get called narcissistic when really they're just doing things to get attention. Or sometimes these folks will be called histrionic when really they're not doing things to get attention. That's not why they're dramatic. The way they act, the reason they act the way they're acting is simply because they just think they're better than everyone else. There's a difference between 2 and 3. The last personality disorder in cluster B is called borderline personality disorder. Borderline, okay? Going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between 2 different modes, okay? People with borderline personality disorder are viewed as unstable, as being impulsive. They do risky things. They change their mind a lot. 1 minute, they might tell you how you're their favorite person in the world and they love you with all their heart and they want to spend the rest of their life with you. And then 5 minutes later, they might tell you that they hate you, they never want to see you again, okay? So when we talk about borderline personality disorder, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, it often gets mixed up with bipolar disorder, okay? This is a personality disorder. Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder, right? Marked by emotional affect, depression, and mania, right? Or hypomania and dysthymia, right? Mild depression, mild mania. Let's talk about different things. You don't need to write anything down the slide. I just want you to listen and kind of think through. All the stuff about borderline is going to be in purple up here, okay? So they estimate that about 1/3 of folks are misdiagnosed. Bipolar disorder is long funks, depression that could last for weeks, and then mania that could last for days or weeks. Whereas with borderline personality disorder, BPD, people will go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth many times throughout the day. And it's not based on their internal mode and thinking. Borderline personality disorder, because it's about personality disorders, it's about social interactions. It's very much based on what's happening around them, okay? Whereas bipolar disorder is more about what's going on inside of you. Borderline personality disorder is based on external events. So we'll look at something in class where y'all kind of take a little quiz about these. So you don't need to write anything down here. Just know that these are not the same thing. They often get misdiagnosed. Bipolar is long-term moods, internal. Borderline is more cycles, quick switches based on external events, right, in purple down here, and it's a personality disorder. All right, the third cluster I want to cover with you is cluster C, related to anxiety and fear. We have one called avoidant personality disorder, where people just kind of prefer not to be with others, and that impacts their thinking, their emotions, their self-control, and their social relationships. Right? Dependent personality disorder, people who always need to be around others. Sometimes these folks are just thought of as like extreme extroverts, but they actually have a personality disorder where their need to be with other people and the way that they like form these intense relationships. Sometimes it might be like one person or two people that they like cling to. They have to always have them around. They have to bring them with them wherever they go. Okay, it's a personality disorder that impacts them to a point where they can't live a normal life. It doesn't make sense and it's unusual. So dependent personality disorder. And there have been some horror movies and horror films about people who have developed dependent personality disorder or relationships with folks who have dependent personality disorder, and how it can just ruin somebody's life when someone is always clinging to that, doesn't give them any room to be their own person. And it's a psychological need, like with withdrawal, intolerance, and addiction. Really disturbing. The third personality disorder, and the 10th one that we've talked about here in cluster C, is called, this is going to confuse you, but obsessive compulsive personality disorder, OCPD. It looks a little bit like OCD, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But the idea here is that people with OCPD, they want to be a perfectionist. They have systems or methods for doing things. They want to be efficient, and they think that the way that they do things is the best way to do things. And this impacts the way they think, the way they emote, their affect, their emotions, and the way they interact with others. So let's do a little slide here about the difference between this anxiety disorder and this personality disorder. They both relate to obsessions and compulsions, meaning the way you think and what you do. But here's some of the differences. People with OCD, they have anxiety because of their obsessions and compulsions. People with OCPD, they will sometimes appear super rational, logical, and they feel like they're making sense. They don't necessarily have anxiety about their thinking and behaviors, right? They might view what they're doing as being the right way to do things and being good for themselves and for others and for society. Whereas folks with OCD, they realize that what they're doing is irrational, okay? So when one of these individuals comes to get therapy, and you don't need to write this stuff down, just kind of listen and think, right? When someone with an anxiety disorder goes to get therapy, it's because they feel stressed out, because they feel like they have to act this way, and they hate the fact that they do these things. When people with a personality disorder go get treatment, they typically don't mind the way they are. In fact, they think that the way they do things is the right way to do things. When they get therapy or treatment, it's usually because someone in their life, a parent, a spouse, a partner, a sibling, a coworker, a boss, a child has said, I can't live with you the way that you do things. And they'll show up to counseling, to therapy, to treatment, and say, hey, listen, my wife's got issues with the way I do the dishes, clean the house all the time, the way I need things to be, the way I set our calendar, our scheduling, the way I take trips, right? My wife seems to have issues with this, or my kids have told me that they can't handle the way I do things. And the people with OCPD, they like the way they do things. It's the way they've always done things. OCPD, it's usually a long-term thing. It's chronic. It has not changed very much over the course of their lives. And they say, I guess I need to come get help because I'm having relational issues, okay? So OCPD, more long-term, they like the way they are, but sometimes it causes strains in their relationships. Whereas with OCD, these folks often will hate the way that they are and the things that they do. And those symptoms may get worse and fluctuate over time and come in and out depending on stresses in life, okay? So we talked about 10 personality disorders. Let me bring this in close now so you can kind of check out this chart. It's a pretty cool chart here. So we have 3 colors here, purple, blue, and orange. And we have a list of the 10 disorders here with a quick little summary of each. And then if you look over here, it shows us the percentages, right? So only 1.5% of folks would be diagnosed with one of these blue ones, the ones that I said that are most famous, right? Antisocial, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic. We have a 5.7% with the purples, cluster A. 6% of folks could be diagnosed with a cluster orange. Now, if you add up these numbers here, you get something over 13%. And yet, only 9% of people have a personality disorder. Why is this? Well, the star here tells us that some people have what's called overlapping diagnosis, meaning they might have multiple personality disorders. That is possible, okay? So keep that in mind when we're talking about these diagnoses. Last thing I want y'all to be able to do, and in class we'll take a little quiz about the personality disorders, but see without your notes if you can answer these 6 questions, all right? Just to make sure that you kind of understand the different clusters and the different personality disorders within each. There's a great crash course, one crash course all about this stuff. If you want to learn more, feel free to go and watch that on your own. Otherwise, I will see y'all in class. Peace out.